Hi, my name is Bryan. In this video, we are going to figure out how to determine the equilibrium price and quantity in the market using the equation for demand and supply. We are looking at the Z market here. We verified the demand equation, which we can see here the price demand is 80 minus key. I've come up with the supply equation that we can combine with the demand equation in order to determine equilibrium. The price supplied can be represented by the equation 20 plus 2 times the quantity. Let's start by plotting our demand and supply curves on the graph. To do this, we must first determine the intercept of demand and intercept of supply. The key intercept of demand is found easily by setting price to 0 and calculating the quantity at which price demanded equals 0. The quantity intercept of the demand curve is 80, which I'm going to go ahead and plot on my table over here. The p-intercept of demand is easily found because it is in fact the a variable in demand equation. I know that my demand curve intercepts the price axis at 80, so I can put another point on my graph at a price of 80. These 2 points allow me to draw up my demand curve. Next, let's draw the supply curve. Now to find the supply curve, we must first find the key intercept of supply, which I do by setting price supply to 0. The supply curve begins at a quantity of minus 10. The p-intercept of supply can be found by setting the quantity supplied to 0. With these 2 points along my supply curve, I can go ahead and plot the supply curve. I have now drawn both my demand curve and my supply curve. Now it will be simple enough to estimate the equilibrium price by looking at the intersection of demand and supply. But we also need to be able to calculate equilibrium price and quantity using the equation themselves. So it looks from the graph as if the equilibrium price is going to be around 60 and the equilibrium quantity will be around 20. But just to prove that these estimates are correct, we are going to go ahead and show how to calculate equilibrium price using the equation themselves. In a market for a particular good, equilibrium is achieved when demands equals supply. All we have to do is set the demand and the supply equation equal to each other and calculate the quantity at which the two are equal. Let's do that now. We know that the demand is represented by the equation 80 minus key, and the supply is represented by the equation 20 plus 2 times key. All we have to do now is solve for key in this equation and we will know at which quantity the two are equal to each other. Let's do that now. Sure enough, it turns out that the equilibrium quantity is exactly 20. I did this by setting the demand and supply equation equal to each other and solving for key. All we have left to do is to determine the equilibrium price, and all we need to do in order to figure out what the equilibrium price is plug the quantity into either the demand and or the supply equation. We will start with the demand equation. The price demanded at a quantity of 20 is QT equals 80 minus 20. Yes, 80 minus 20, which as predicted equals 60. So the price demanded at the equilibrium price is 60. Let's go ahead and check by plugging the quantity of 20 into our supply equation. Alright, PS equals 60. Sure enough, the price supplied and the price demanded at a quantity of 20 are equal to one another. This confirms that 20 is in fact our equilibrium quantity and 60 is in fact our equilibrium price. So in this video, we have shown how to calculate equilibrium price and quantity by setting the demand and supply equation equal to one another in solving for key. Then once you have the equilibrium quantity, you simply plug it into either the demand or the supply equation, or even better into both to determine the equilibrium price. So now we are going to look at what happens when we put a tax in this market. We are going to put this tax on sellers, so sellers are responsible for paying the tax to the government. We will use the same equation as the first problem, and the tax is 6 rupiah. The way to solve it is like this. So we can see that when there's a tax, the equilibrium of quantity turns into 18th. Next, all we have left to do is to determine the equilibrium price after tax, and all we need to do in order to figure out what the equilibrium price is, plug the quantity into either the demand and or the supply equation. We'll start with the demand equation. The price demanded at a quantity of 18th is QT equals 80 minus 18th equals 62. So the price demanded after tax at the equilibrium price is 62. Let's go ahead and check by plugging the quantity of 18th into our supply equation. PS equals 20 plus 2 times 18 plus 6. PS equals 62. Sure enough, the price supplied and the price demanded at a quantity of 18 are equal to one another. This confirms that 18 is in fact our equilibrium quantity and 62 is in fact our equilibrium price. Now we are going to plot the supply curve on the graph by determining the key intercept and p-intercept of supply. The key intercept of supply is found easily by setting price to 0 and calculating the quantity at which price demanded equals 0. The quantity intercept of the supply curve is minus 13, which I'm going to go ahead and plot on my table over here. The p-intercept of supply can be found by setting the quantity supplied to 0. $26. With these 2 points along my supply curve, I can go ahead and plot the supply curve. I've now drawn both my demand curve and my supply curve. And yeah, finish.